Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Hello, and welcome to Last Library on the Left. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sadina. We're a horror review and discussion podcast where we talk about horror in books, movies, and other formats, why we seek it out, and why we need it in our lives.
And first, I just want to say that we're recording through Zoom because I have a busy life right now and I'm forgetting things. And actually, that's a lie. I was playing Pokemon Go this weekend and we couldn't record because it was Go Fest. And let's just be honest. I had things to do, but I needed to catch all the Pokemon as well. There's something called a shiny version, and my favorite Pokemon is Snorlax, and that's what I was looking for, and I did not get him. So,
Aww.
Yeah, I'm very bummed about that. It is what it is. So, yeah, that's why we're recording through Zoom because I'm about to go on vacation, and I just didn't have time. So, welcome to the Zoom audio recording. So today we're doing our second part of the psychology of horror, why we like horror movies. This episode is the second part of the graphic, which you have not seen the entire graphic. I'll release it on release day, so you'll see the whole thing. But today's topics are 8 theories on why we like horror. When I was doing some research, I found out that these theories came from research done by a man named John Hess, and you can find his research on Filmmaker IQ. You can just Google Filmmaker IQ John Hess, and he has a little video. So it was really nice to see that that's where it came from. So let's get started with the theories. The very first one is psychoanalytical, and underneath the theory it says comes from the primitive id suppressed by the civilized ego.
Although I wish that it said it suppressed by the modern ego, because I feel like civilized is such a Eurocentric way of expressing the modern world.
Yeah. I was like, oh, are we going back to Freud? That's the one person I don't care for his analysis. And
yeah.
Maybe that says something about me. I don't know, but
I mean, he would think so.
Yeah, obviously. And so I was like, well, okay, let me just do a little bit of research into the psychoanalytical because obviously I couldn't relate, right? So when I was doing some research as to what it was and how I could relate to it, the only thing that I caught that I related to was Norman Bates and his mother in Psycho, and subconsciously him allowing his mother to control him even after she died. And while I can relate to that in a sense because subconsciously my mother is also in my head. But for me, that's how I put it in terms of horror. A movie like Psycho, where, you know, you've got that main character who is a villain, but they're also being pushed by something else, his mom. And
see, I would think that that would encompass most of Hitchcock's, you know, would be psychoanalytic, because a lot of it, the very end was where you kind of reframed the entire story.
Yeah. Ooh, and what about even some of M. Night Shyamalan's? I would say his is not technically horror, but I think that's what he was trying to achieve in his movies. And while more of his movies are made fun of than they are celebrated, I think that's what he was going for. And I like some of his early stuff, but I think that's what he was trying to achieve in some of his movies. Was I think we can all say that with Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, okay. I guess I watched some psychoanalytical. I guess maybe when done well, I can enjoy them.
I would say The Village too with him is probably psychoanalytic. It's probably a mix of that and like theory number 8, which we'll get to. Yeah, because I think that the whole point of the psychoanalytic is there's a part of you that's like me. I want to solve the puzzle. I want to see how this works out, why it works out, and all the different ways it can work out.
Yeah. So I'm going to reference the text group that I was not active in this morning because sometimes I respond to text in my head, and I did in my head. And so Sadina, Taylor, and I were in a conversation about a book that we reviewed for our library podcast. And well, they were talking, I was just reading. But Taylor mentioned that she didn't like having figured it out and being one step ahead of the plot. And so I think she is also a psychoanalytic person. You know, she likes to figure out the puzzle, but she doesn't want to be so far ahead that she's figured it out all the way, right?
She doesn't want to have figured it out so soon. She wants to be able to tease out that mystery a bit more and maybe have a red herring or two.
Yeah. I was like, but I'm the dummy that I let the book lead me where it needs me to go. So I could not relate because I wasn't trying to figure it out. But it was a good book. But I liked seeing her explanation of why she didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, because the other thing about Taylor is that she really likes the first page, the first paragraph to grab you.
Yeah.
And if it takes a little while to get into, she's not really about it, which I'm the opposite. Well, I'm not necessarily the opposite, but what I really want is to build a world that I'm completely invested in. So when you burn it to the ground, I'm like so much more devastated.
I'm sort of a mix between the two of you because if a book gets me right in the first paragraph or so, like hooked, obviously really invested. But if I get a recommendation from someone that says, hey, it's a slow starter, but you're going to really enjoy it, and it takes a while to build up, then I'll read it knowing that I'm going to get somewhere eventually where the action is starting up. Sort of like Game of Thrones almost. I never wanted to watch it. And then people were like, Jennifer, you got to watch it. It's slow to begin with, but once the action hits, it's nonstop. Yeah, something like that. I'm definitely mixed between the two of you when it comes to like book reading. And also I read the last page.
I do too, but I only do it when I'm afraid that the story is not going where I thought it would go, or when I think it's not going to end within like a spectrum of where I want it to end. But if I start to panic 50 pages before it's over and I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? This is completely a left turn and I don't know where this is going anymore. And all this time I've invested is gonna just turn to ash. I need to know what's happening. Or if there's a character I haven't seen in a while, I'll go to the last page. And if I see their name on the page, I'm like, okay, at least I know that they come back in some form or another. Even if it's so-and-so, we hardly knew you. Like you're dead.
Yeah. If it has an epilogue, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get some sort of resolution some way, somehow. So oftentimes I kind of look for that. But it depends on the genre too. It might not necessarily be horror, because with horror you don't really get a lot of epilogues. But
if you do, it's always to like completely trash that maybe happy ending.
Like Stephen King and the Tall Grass. I'm sorry, there was no epilogue, but that last paragraph could have been an epilogue, and it was the worst.
Yeah, right. You get an epilogue in horror when they're like, oh, you thought that I ended it well and that you were safe? Well, now look.
Yeah.
The curse has come back, or they relit the black candle or whatever. I guess now that we are really far off the track.
Yeah, let's go back.
Psychoanalytic. Yeah, so I think some horror movies are made to be a psychoanalysis of the human nature, or what could happen in circumstance, or how different people react to things. Like the new the escape room ones.
Oh yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch them, but I kind of want to watch them, because initially when I saw the idea of the escape room, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was a haunted house that you had to escape, and I was like, hell no.
I always knew it was library related, or not library. My dumbass. No. I always knew it was an event, I guess is what I'm trying to say, like not haunted per se, but I wasn't particularly interested in the movies at first, because I was like, oh no, it's gonna be like Saw, where like they make too many and it's gonna get burned out or whatever. But I think that that's meant to be psychoanalytical, like Saw, which is also like gory or whatever. But I personally, as a horror watcher and consumer, I'm psychoanalytical of every movie I watch. I'm the person who will annoy the absolute out of you, because I want to pause. Well, I won't pause, but like in my head, I'm like thinking, okay, well, what does that mean? Was that something? Oh, when we read the book for the library's podcast, there was the part where they break open the crab and they see the lungs and the gills. And I was like, oh, that's clearly an allusion to whatever. And then they talked about how they were the only crabs left, and it was a special irises. And I was like, wow, this book is not subtle about all the clues. Yeah. And so I read as if I'm a researcher analyzing the stuff.
Yeah, you do. But it takes you to so many different theories, and I enjoy the theories.
That's true, I guess. Although sometimes I get really off the wall. It didn't happen with the last few books we read. I will say Out of Body by Ford really took me by surprise.
Yeah,
I was trying to analyze it as I read it, and then the twist came and I was like, what?
Oh
I
man.
even remember putting it down on the plane and being like, I don't know where to go from here. That was so far off the board from what I was expecting.
It really was. I wasn't expecting that of all things. And I wasn't
Right.
analyzing it, but yeah, same. It was a twist that I was just like, okay, I guess we're gonna run with this. It was a funny one. That was a funny one. Which that's one of the books that you'll get to read and listen to us talk about in our 31 days.
Yes, I will definitely go into more in depth about how much I read into it before it knocked me for a loop.
I love it. So when I consume horror, like I said, I don't consume it because I want to like analyze it, but there are some that I do want to analyze that are more like thrillers, I would say. When I was thinking about it, I kept thinking about this one specific movie called Kiss the Girls. And that one, I really analyzed the heck out of it because I was trying to, I put myself in the place of the detective and I wanted to save the girls. I was constantly analyzing every little detail that they showed on the screen and just trying to figure it out.
That was the Morgan Freeman movie, right? That was based on like the James Patterson books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Oh, ooh, The Lady in the Water.
Yes, that's another one. Yeah.
That's when every time I watch it, I feel like I'm psychoanalyzing it from a new angle.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite M. Night Shyamalan's movie.
Yeah, that's a really good one. But that's the same one that when I look at it, every time I watch it too, like I'm analyzing something different. Yeah, I like a lot of his movies, so I watch a lot of them often. But Shape of Water, that one I went back and I rewatched a couple times after we talked about it. I just kept thinking, like, that's the amphibian man. I know that's the origin story. And I keep looking for clues. And then I went back looking for the narrator and his evolution. And then I went back looking for, oh gosh, the main character, her name escapes me. Looking for clues to when she started becoming more bold in the beginning, just different things. So there are some movies that do stay with me and I just go back and I just reanalyze them after I let myself be taken on the journey.
I'm glad that you went back and watched that one a couple more times because I really liked that one and you did not at first.
I was like, I can't believe we're going to watch this movie. And I think I said of all of them, it was my least favorite. Yeah. But I guess it must have stayed with me for me to go back and watch because I've watched it like 3 times already so far.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's one of my 3 a.m. watches. I don't know.
Huh. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the primitive id suppressed by the modern ego. The id is not necessarily a bad thing. The id is just the impulsive side of you. I didn't really like the language in this particular theory.
I have to agree with you. The language on it is what I didn't like. Once I got into the meat of it, and now that we're talking about it, like I am psychoanalytic with some movies, but the language describing it was really threw me off. I like the way you described that because I was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. What the F?
I think that some of the others are better described, but this one was weird because it definitely feels, I don't know, that feels like it almost bleeds into one of the other theories, which I think that's just the problem with the way that they worded it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that just leaves us to move on to the next one. So the next theory is catharsis, and I always laugh at the little graphic because it shows someone on someone else's back hitting another person. So catharsis, the description says it gives people a chance to purge their negative emotions, which immediately made me think of The Purge just because the word purge is in there. And I was like, no, thank you.
No, I think the same thing. I think of The Purge and I'm like, well, that didn't really end well. So it's not making catharsis seem like a good reason to watch.
Yeah. Now, one of the things when I came across it was that one of the things that they say is there's a debate going on that horror watching, when it's used for catharsis, it desensitizes people when it comes to horror and it promotes aggression. And I was like, no, because I've watched horror since I was a little girl. Like I'm talking little, and I like, yes, I have attitude, but I don't feel like I'm aggressive in my everyday life. I think I'm pretty chill. So I was like, no, that's a no. And I'm for sure not desensitized because I can see some things in horror movies and be okay with it, but in real life, so I disagree with that little debate there.
I think it sounds too much like the excuse that bad parents who raise their children by the TV used in the 90s for violent video games.
Yeah.
And if they were truly that concerned with violent video games affecting youth, we would not have Call of Duty or esports.
Right. Yeah. So I was in high school when Columbine happened. And I remember all the news outlets blaming Marilyn Manson for it and blaming heavy metal and, like you said, the violent video games and violent TV. And I kept thinking, like, that's not what prompted these two boys to do what they did. That was, they couldn't handle their own emotions. There was some mental instability there that they couldn't handle. And maybe they heard no and they didn't know how to deal with it. I don't know, but it wasn't because of Marilyn Manson. Sorry, I don't buy it one bit.
The fact that they're trying to claim that horror desensitizes you and can promote aggression. First off, aggression runs in my family on my dad's side, and I've worked very hard to redirect it into other things. Mm-hmm. One of those things is horror, because it's a catharsis for that aggression. It helps me purge these negative emotions and these actions to kind of feel. In fact, we were talking about something at work last week, and someone was talking about aggression or a bad temper. And I was like, yeah, I too have a bad temper. And they're like, yeah, I heard about the way that you reacted this one time when we were open. And I was like, oh no, that's me calm. That's me after years of getting my shit together. That's not the bad temper I'm talking about. You people have not seen me lose my temper yet. You've seen me irritated.
Yeah, I've seen you irritated. I've seen you frustrated. But even when you're frustrated, I could see the cogs working in your head because you're trying to figure out how to, like, problem solve.
And it doesn't desensitize me. I, to this day, have been unable to fully watch an opening cutscene of American Horror Story. Yeah. The credits and the creepy song and all the images freak me out just enough. They're so unsettling. I have never watched a full opening credit scene.
I mean, agreed, because that music, and I am not as smart as you to where I could fast forward it, so I do watch it. But it does make my skin crawl. Now, The Walking Dead, when I used to watch it, it was the same thing. The music didn't scare me, but the imagery that they put up, they would show you the zombies and stuff, and I'm like, it's so gross. But I would watch the show. I don't know. That whole desensitizing thing, I'm not really a fan of it. I don't really agree with it. And I think it's just like an excuse.
I agree. I think it's an excuse to withhold certain aspects of culture from younger audiences so you can control what younger audiences consume, which is not good. Censoring information, even horror, allows people like predators to creep in and take advantage of children who have not seen just how bad it can be out there.
Yeah. So I think it's really smart, like you said, to have that safe space to engage in horror. And I mean, obviously use like your judgment when you're showing children in horror or you're introducing them to it, but it's a good way to show them that there are bad people out there, because there are, because we see, I'm sorry, horror is the news now. Like, that's all we see is bad stuff. So to expose them to that, educate them, and use it as a moment of conversation, to me, it can only be positive.
Yeah, I always try to redirect patrons who try to shame their children for picking up a creepy book or a graphic novel, and I try to explain to them what these media are actually doing for their child.
Yes, because I think it's essential to start a conversation. Listen, you can do with any type of book. Sadina knows, my daughter is reading now, and we use communication with the books all the time, to the point where she had her own dang book club last week. And she created a whole discussion on this little early reader chapter book. It was the cutest thing, but I felt proud because I felt like she knew that this form of media promotes discussion.
I think that's adorable that she had a book group on an early reader and that she found enough inside of an early reader to have a discussion. That's amazing.
Yeah, she came up with 5 original questions, and now my nephew is having one.
If there was a kid who ever needed a book group and some discussion, that little boy right there. Let's just be honest.
So promoting discussion with your kids, I just don't see how you can go wrong with that. And
Yeah.
entering a little bit of horror is even better.
Yeah.
So as far as catharsis, that's one of the main reasons why I view horror. That theory is me. I don't necessarily want to purge negative emotions as so much as I want to kind of escape it for a minute. Like I just don't want to think about it. So when I'm in really heavy headspace, I don't want to say a dark headspace because I'm not really in dark headspaces too often. But when I'm in a heavy headspace where there's just a lot going on, or I just feel bogged down with work, overwhelmed, that's when I run to like a horror movie. I want one that I know that is good. Cabin in the Woods is one of my all-time go-tos because I get a couple laughs out of it. I know what the ending is going to be like. It's not a good ending, but it is a good ending. You know what I mean? It's got some of my favorite tropes in it. It's a feel-good horror for me. I feel good after watching it just because I've escaped my life for that hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah. As far as catharsis goes too, I was looking over these 8 theories, and I actually don't think I can think very often about specific movies that I can correlate to these theories. I think it's whether or not I can connect with that theory. Psychoanalytic, obviously. Catharsis, absolutely. But some of the others I don't connect with, and I don't know. I definitely do catharsis though. I just look, it's either that or like, so I don't know why, but maybe it's part of my OCD. When I am at a precipice of emotional whatever, one of the ways that I come back down and recollect myself is to consume content. And so depending on what emotion was overriding me, yeah, horror is sometimes what I go for. Like I want a good scare to have those emotions that are plaguing me kind of superseded.
So I mean, it is a little bit cathartic in a way. I like that.
I need to consume content basically to reframe my mind to keep it from spiraling out, which you guys heard last episode. I spiral out way too easily given the chance. I mean, it takes a dark house and nobody answering a door for me to question my entire reality.
I just listened to our episode today and I was dying laughing. Because I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't think you're real, but I'm fine.
Oh, poor Becca. She was so concerned for me for like so long. And I was like, no, it's perfectly normal. And she was like, that does not help.
That's why you always start a relationship with, I'm the weird one.
Right.
Just like, just whatever comes your way, I'm weird.
Yeah, you think that you're strange. Let me tell you.
Too funny. Okay, so we're gonna move along to number 3, excitation transfer, which I always say excitation because it's excited, so whatever. If I said
no,
I
think excitation is right.
Yeah, okay. I was like, huh. So that one means negative feelings in the movie intensify the happy emotions when the hero wins, which I identify with highly.
Really?
Yes.
It is such a strange concept for me.
I identify it highly. The more scared I am in the movie while it's happening, the more, if there's a positive result to the end, I'm so happy. Like the first time I saw Scream, I was scared. I was so scared. And then towards the end, when they're doing, when the reporter is giving her little news report and the music starts to play, I'm like, oh. It's like I breathe a sigh of relief. I come out of like, oh my gosh, that's such a great movie. Like, just the serotonin is flowing. I definitely like relate to that a lot, but I put in here that I think because I grew up on the 80s slasher movies, and a lot of times you had the one person who survived, right? It tried to end on a happy note, even though sometimes you didn't get the happy note. So I think that's why that's the one that I identify with a lot, because I love when the hero wins, and I love it, even though it doesn't happen a lot in horror. So that's why I think I tend to stick to the ones where I can see the happy ending. Also, for me, this one, I think of The Final Girl, and I think this pertains to a lot of Final Girl movies, right? And so I watch a lot of those too. So it's just whenever I see a movie where the person that I like, they survive, killer dies, I'm just like, yes, I'm just so hype. So that one I definitely identify identify with a lot.
I don't. So movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, things like that, where there's that big emotional payoff at the end where everybody's like, oh, that sigh of relief. I feel so unfulfilled. I feel so depleted from all the stress and anxiety of what was going on that when it all just kind of works out, I'm like, but that wouldn't happen. Like, that's not how that works. And so it's like Pleasantville ending feels like it's depleted me even more because then I'm disappointed.
This is where the unrealism comes in.
Right. Okay, so the movie Pitch Black was probably the first horror movie of its time around like what, the late 90s, early 2000s. It ended, okay, not a spoiler alert, guys, because first off, we have that in the beginning, but also this movie is like old enough to drink, so you should have seen it by now. The fact that she dies at the end and he's just like, well, fuck, that sucks, but they like leave the plan anyway. I was like, yeah, that's how shit happens sometimes. The romantic interest dies anyway, and then you're like, well, fuck it, like I'm not gonna go get vengeance on this planet, I'm just gonna save my own skin, and you go. And I was like, yeah, I was so enamored with that ending. I was like, yeah, that's how it is sometimes. That's fucking life. And I might be the only person crazy enough who was happy with that ending, who was like, yes, that was the ending I deserved.
It took me watching it a couple times because I watched it in theater and I was like, I came here for this. I was really, because I was a teenager and I like I made my whole family come with me and none of them wanted to watch it. And I was like, oh, it's going to have a fabulous ending, so it'll be fine. And I was like, oh, it was a bad movie. They're not going to like it. But I personally loved it.
Yeah.
When anyone says Vin Diesel, my sister's like, oh, Pitch Black, because I made them all go see it. So again, it was one that I had to watch a couple times, but I eventually grew to like the ending. But I also appreciate some of those endings that are more realistic.
I wonder if it was preparing me for the day when things in my life would get really hard, where the hero doesn't come at the end, that you have to be your own hero. I was primed for all of that by preferring unhappy endings. That sounds really terrible and tragic. My life is not terrible. I just want to say that.
I mean, guys, she's a children's librarian.
Oh my God. What if being a children's librarian is the excitation transfer? You know, like it gives me like my life is like the low and then my job is like the payoff.
I mean, that's just sad. So we're not going to say that.
Okay. Oh my God. Because yeah, going through school, I thought I knew what I wanted, but none of the emotional payoff of the work I was doing in the fields I thought I wanted to be in gave me a high enough. And then it wasn't until I was in children's librarianship where I was like, yeah, that's the emotional payoff I've been needing in my life. And like now I have it.
When you say it, it's so funny because it makes me think of childbirth because it's painful and there's blood. And then after you get this little tiny human and you're just like, oh my God, I forgot the pain and I forgot all the horror that just happened. Like, they're so cute. Ah. Yeah, I mean, the excitation transfer could really be applied to a bunch of different things, I guess. So that's really interesting. How funny that you're like, I don't really relate to it. Like, really? You kind of do. All right. Well, and on that note, we're going to move on to number 4, curiosity and fascination. And the description for that is it exists outside normal behavior. The only thing I wrote down for that is my love of American Horror Story and The Night Stalker. And the previous American Horror Story was 1984. And I watched it for the 80s nostalgia, and in there was this character, the Night Stalker, which everyone knows is a true serial killer, but I don't really follow serial killers like most people do, just because that's not my thing. We've discussed this. We're not really serial killer people. When I saw this Night Stalker in here, I'm ashamed to say it, but I was super fascinated with him. And I completely got how people consume true crime and they research everything about serial killers. I was finally invested into it. So I got that. And it's not necessarily what I would normally relate to horror with. But when I watched The Night Stalker and then the Night Stalker docuseries came out on Netflix recently this summer, I watched that. That cured all that curiosity because that was frightening.
The American Horror Story Hotel season has got a bit of the Night Stalker story in it too.
Yes, that I want to watch because I can watch the fake stuff with Robert Ramirez with American Horror Story, but like anything real about him, I can't. That docuseries was disgusting, and then seeing his face was really scary. I was so scared. So yeah, that definitely cured that whole fascination part. Like I'll never have that again.
Damn.
Mm-mm.
So the infographic, it has someone saying so weird. And whenever I see that, I always think of Supernatural, or X-Files, that campy kind of terrible monster of the week show. That's what I think of whenever I see Curiosity and Fascination. I think of Monster of the Week.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Because, I mean, I watched Twilight show when I was younger, X-Files too. So I could definitely see whatchamacallit, Tales from the Crypt, all those I watched very much. Yeah. Curiosity, Fascination.
And the 2-sentence horror stories that are on Netflix now, those are really interesting too, because they take these 2 sentences that tells a horrific story, but in such a succinct way that you build the story up in your head. And some of them, you're like, that's so wild and so weird because you took these 2 sentences and made it this kind of exists outside of normal behavior, but within the realm of reality.
Yeah, I just followed their IG page on our Instagram page, and I was reading through some of them and I was like, no, that's a no. How is it that 2 sentences could really freaking just destroy you?
Girl, some of them. Okay, do you remember that podcast that I had you listen to? First season was the best. It was like Darkest Night.
Darkest Night, yeah.
Girl, Darkest Night. That one is Curiosity and Fascination for me because it was so outside the realm of what social behaviors would say is okay.
Yeah.
But it was so horrific that you're like, man, that sounds like some shit that like you think would happen.
Yeah. I binged that so hard.
Whew, that first season messed me up real good. So I think I told you this, but when I was listening to the first season of Darkest Night, I was working at MIT and I had the little cubicle and I tended to work later than the rest of my side of the department. And there'd be days when I was the only one in the entire office and I would hear whispering coming up behind me and I'd be like, and I'd have to like pause it and take my headphones off and like look around and kind of breathe and then like hit play again. Oh, it was so good. So disturbing and so good.
So, yeah. We definitely recommend season 1 of Darkest Night. The sound effects are just, you really feel like you're in the podcast with them and you're in the story with them. And it's so gross and so good and so horrific. Ugh, love it.
Yes. None of the seasons after it hit as hard as the first one. I think it was because the end of the first season takes you by surprise where all of these seemingly disparate stories got pulled into one reality and you were like, oh, I hate all of this.
At that point, Sajid and I were still working in the same building and I was listening to it and I was just like texting her the whole time like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe it. And then I would run over to children. Oh my God. Just in shock. It was so well done.
That one, I guess, for me would be Curiosity and Fascination.
I'm interested to what our listeners have for Curiosity and Fascination because that's an interesting one, I think, for both of us. Okay, so we're halfway down. Well, we're getting more than halfway down now. So number 5 on our theories list is disposal and alignment theory. And the description for disposal and alignment theory is enjoyment, punish those who deserve it.
So the watcher enjoys punishing those who deserve it.
Yes.
I think that's what you live that part of the horror. So I think of like Dexter.
That's a good one.
Even though that wasn't like horror, it definitely had enough gore.
Yeah, that was one that I couldn't watch because of all the gore. Like,
really?
Every now and again, there's just some gore that I just can't handle. And I think at the time, there was so much gore out there. It was a trend for a minute, gore horror. I couldn't get behind Dexter. And I was also watching CSI. So there was a lot in there that I couldn't handle like mentally. So I think maybe that's why I just couldn't get into Dexter, which I want to start watching it since I hear that they're redoing it.
Well, they're not redoing it. They're continuing it. They're picking up where they left off.
I don't know why I thought they were we're doing it. But yes, so I would like to start watching Dexter now.
I will say that's one of my favorite shows. My friend Oz on his podcast, Opinions While Black, was talking about it with his co-host Dee Randall, and they were talking about, I think they were talking about Lovecraft Country and things that like end before you're ready for them to, but wrap up well. And you can argue Lovecraft Country wrapped up okay. It could stand on its own on one season. But he was saying that Dexter could have ended on the third season or something like that. And while I agree, storytelling wise, I got so much visceral pleasure out of watching him hunt down bad people and punish them that I didn't want to give it up. I had the first season. I was watching it at my mom's house because I don't think I had a TV at the time.
Yeah.
And so I was watching it at her place, and she came home early from work, and she kind of like sat in the foyer, watched, and when the episode ended or whatever, and she looked at me and she goes, "You're only watching this because you wish you could do that." And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Yeah, okay, I still love you." And I was like, "Thanks, Mom."
Oh man, I think if I was to say anything, like I'm going to go into the books because there are two book series that I read back to back. One was titled I Hunt Serial Killers by Barry Lyga.
About the boy whose dad was a serial killer,
Yeah,
right?
and his dad seemed to want him to become a serial killer too, and he kept fighting it. And so I took great pleasure in knowing that he was punishing his dad in a way. And the other one was a series by Dan Wells called I Am Not a Serial Killer, and it was about a teenage boy who thought he had the serial killer gene. And I take great pleasure in those because they're punishing their dads and they're really doing their best to make something of themselves. It's not horror. So I'm like, yes, I can enjoy this. So that's the only thing that I can think of where I get enjoyment out of it. There hasn't been a horror that I enjoy where they punish someone else, because mostly it's the villain that's punishing good people, like Saw.
Right.
So that one I don't really relate to as well.
I do relate to it in so much as I'm a sucker for a good anti-hero. I think that the idea of being able to like, well, let me stop there. Let's just say that disposal and alignment theory is my thing.
We're about to get real deep real fast.
Right. Let me just say that that's why I watch horror for catharsis, because otherwise the disposal and alignment theory may hit a bit harder.
Yeah. Oh man. See, I feel like I need to watch more for that specific reason. I feel like if I watch Dexter, maybe, you know what I mean? I haven't exposed myself to those types of films, I feel, to be honest.
I will say one thing about Dexter. So when it came out, I was working at Borders many, many years ago, and my coworkers who were watching it, one of their biggest complaints was that the opening scene really freaked them out. The credit scene, like I was saying, the American Horror Story one freaked me out. The Dexter opening scene really freaked them out. And I personally watched it every time. Like, I loved it. I thought it was so artistically done well, and I was really enjoying it. And then someone at work was like, "Nah, man, that's just gross." And I was like, yeah.
Yes, it's gross. I agree.
Let me just walk away now. Right. Isn't that weird? I have to go do something in this other area of the store.
I can relate to that all too well. Okay, well, on to 6. We only have 3 more. So our 6th theory is sensation-seeking scale, and it's for those that have the greater interest in exciting things like roller coasters. And I told Sadina in pre-production, I don't appreciate roller coasters. I don't like them. I also don't like haunted houses. I cried on a roller coaster, and I cried at a haunted house. So I don't do those, but I love a sensation-seeking horror.
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite. I don't watch horror for the sensation-seeking scale, but I will go to a roller coaster and I will go to a haunted house.
Nope. I don't even like when my car goes over a hill too fast and it like jiggles my stomach. I don't care for that sensation in real life, but the sensation of watching a slasher film is like, ooh, I'm there. I don't know what's wrong with me.
That run through the woods while the guy's chasing, and you're just like really hyped for it.
Yeah, because I'm like, girl, first, why are you wearing heels and not like sensible shoes? You know, it gets all of my, I try not to judge in real life. So I try to be as non-judgmental as I possibly can in work and when I'm just around people in general. But when I watch a horror movie, all those judgments come out. So that sensation, I'm like, oh my God, you're making the dumbest choice right now. You guys know you shouldn't split up, but here you go splitting up. You know? So those kinds of things. I love the sensation of a good fast-paced horror. I'm just a weirdo.
You're not. I think that I'm the weirdo because I see those things and I'm immediately bored. I'm not invested at all. And I'm just like, fine, whatever. The faster you trip and the faster they get to you, the more that this plot can move on. Like, that's how little I'm invested.
I love it because you sound almost bored.
If I watch it in a movie theater, I'm dying to pick up my phone. And if I'm watching it at home, the phone is immediately in my hand and I'm on like Pinterest.
And see, and I'm like, oh man, this is great. But here's the thing. I love a good, horrible movie. I will say to the day I die, one of my favorite B movies is Snakes on a Plane. It's just so horribly done. It's the best. They obviously knew they had a title and they were like, we're going to make a movie out of this title. We don't know how to get the plot on there. So there's really not going to be a plot. There's definitely going to be some bad acting. And we're gonna get Samuel L. Jackson in here, and you know,
that movie always makes me think that there was a writer's room somewhere where they had the cards up on the board of things that they had to do, and those were like the leftover cards, and they're like, how are we gonna make money off these leftover cards?
They knew they had a viewer in Houston, Texas that would enjoy that type of nonsense. And I did. I own it on DVD and on Blu-ray because I'm just the weirdo. So yeah, that's me. I definitely identify with a sensation seeking. So moving on, because I don't have anything else to say about that one. The seventh theory is gender socialization theory. I had to think about that for a second because there's too many consonants. And this one is Snuggles theory and the gender role. And the little image is a woman and a guy saying, I'll protect you, but he's kind of running away from her, which is weird, but okay. And so I told Sadina, so this is one that I definitely don't identify with at all. I'm not here for snuggle theory. I'm not here for a man to protect me when I'm watching horror. But for some reason, my exes are all, they want to do that. And I don't know why. I don't understand it. I had an ex who enjoyed watching me be scared when we watched horror movies. And as you all know, I'm scared when I watch demonic possession. Those really freak me out. So we watched a lot of those because I was trying to overcome this fear because, I don't know, I'm a dum-dum. But this ex in particular liked to think that they could protect me. And so they would always try to like make a cuddle sesh. And I'm like, no, get away from me. If the demon is in this room, I'm going to push you towards the demon, you know? I'm not here for that. I'm not a touchy-feely person anyways. Don't come and try to snuggle me. I also had one date in high school because I didn't date in high school. So the one date that I did have, my 3 guy friends came with me. So it technically wasn't a date, but so we went to see this movie called Valentine, which came out around Valentine's time, but it was a horror that starred David Boreanaz, and I wanted to see it because I was obsessed with him. And it was a serial killer movie. And so while I'm watching it, this dude here who like, I don't know who he is, trying to kiss me. And I was like, no, like that's not, I'm here to watch the movie. I'm not here for you. Like, you know. It doesn't connect with the snuggle theory, and I don't like that. And so now I just watch horrors by myself. There was one ex though that I told Sadina that it kind of freaked me out, that they enjoyed watching me get scared, and it wasn't just watching horror movies, it was kind of in real life too. They like to scare me a lot, and I realized that there was some sociopathic tendencies going on there, and so I had to break that relationship off really quick. That was one of the later relationships in my life that freaks me out, and I think about it now and I'll never forget him because I look for him in every potential partner or mate because I don't want to be with that type of person again.
That's unnerving because you were like prey. He was watching you and getting something out of it that he shouldn't have been. And he was preying upon your emotional vulnerability and like not for the snuggle, but just because that gave him some thrill, and that's disgusting.
It is so disgusting. I mean, and there would be times when he'd be like, well, what would happen if so-and-so? And normally like those are fine. I have this friend that I grew up in high school, one of the 3 boys. And one night we're just sitting around chilling and he goes, what would you do if you woke up in the middle of the night and there was a figure in the corner of your room? And I was like, you know what? That's really disgusting. Don't tell me things like that because like, like whenever I wake up at 3 a.m. now, I look in the corner to make sure there's no shadows or whatever, right? And he told me this, 20 years ago, and that still sticks with me. And so this ex would sort sort of start off like that, and I'd be like, ha ha ha, stop. And then it would get into, what if one day you came in, there was blood on the floor and I did something, and I'm like,
oh no, wait, so it's blood on the floor and I'm thinking he's dead, but it's, what if I did something? Oh yeah, that's a crazy person.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, I gotta not talk to you anymore, you know? So that's that real life horror that I don't want to experience.
Yeah, no, that's scary. I don't prescribe to the gender socialization theory either. Maybe because I'm aromantic, the concept is just so alien to me, it doesn't even register. That ex of yours would definitely be a red flag.
Yeah. And we only dated for like a couple weeks, and I was like, yeah, peace out, brother. No way. I think I changed my number after that. I completely changed all of my socials and everything because I was just like, no.
It's so gross.
So gross.
That's what abusers do too. They look for that opening, that weakness that they can exploit. Blech.
So gross. And I mean, I want no part of it. And yeah, I can take care of myself, thanks. That whole gender thing is, that shouldn't even be a concept to me. But I guess some people subscribe to it, so I don't know.
I mean, and if you do, I'm not yucking your yum.
Yeah.
But it's not for me.
Or me. So we'll move on. The last theory of why we consume horror, and it's societal fears, and it's a reflection of societal fears. And so these are for movies sort of like, or series sort of like Lovecraft or Get Out, that talk about real life issues. Or, you know, I think about The Changeling, that's meant to be a horror, but that was a horror to me because I'm always thinking if that could happen in real life. Like, so.
Well, that particular mythology, there were women who were killed because their husbands claimed that they were changelings. And I mean, that's just scary.
That's a scary one. So for me, I don't necessarily seek out horror for societal fears, either dispel them, bring them to light, or just consume it, but I do enjoy it.
I think that while I do not necessarily seek them out, they're one of my favorites, especially as a white passing female. I'm constantly on guard to ensure that I'm erasing my biases and my implicit prejudices, because I know they're there. There's definitely times when I like catch myself and I'm like, oh crap.
Well, I mean, and I think even as a person of color, even I have some implicit biases that we necessarily didn't think about them. They were just taught to us, right? And like one of the things that I was taught alongside those biases was that if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything.
Right.
So when I have these biases, I don't say anything. But in my head, I'm retraining myself to think like, oh my gosh, you know, I need to stop that. Because one of the things that I'll tell you that I do a lot is whenever I see an old person driving, I'm like, okay, I got to get around them because they're going to drive slow. Which that's not necessarily the case. And as a soon-to-be old person myself, like,
no, you're not. Shut up.
I mean,
yeah, but not soon to be a ridiculous person.
Listen, my gray hairs tell a different story, okay?
Whatever.
But I drive slow, so I don't know what I'm judging them for. You know, like, I drive really slow, so I don't know. It's all in there. So in an effort to be more supportive of the Black community, the Asian community, and just communities of color, I did a lot of research during last summer just to kind of educate myself. And one of the things I came across that I think I told you that just like totally blew my mind was that even though slavery has been abolished, there are still terms that were used during those times that we still use today. For example, master bathroom, master bedroom. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I was saying that my whole life. It's just so ingrained in me. And when people talk like systemic racism is not a thing, yes, it is, because we all say master bath and master bedroom. Why do we say that? Because it was a term that was used for the masters back in the day. It's just kind of untraining your brain or training your brain correctly.
I think one of the reasons why I like watching these the most is because I go by this motto of press where it hurts. You know, when you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, do you hurt here and da da da, and that's how they find out where you're sick or where something is wrong in your body. If I'm watching something and it like shocks me, or I'm like, oh my God, like that, I didn't even occur to me, and if it didn't occur to me, it can't be right, and I'm like, oh, that's a problem. That's something I have to really investigate.
Yeah, I think I'm with with you there. It's probably one of my favorite reasons now, because I realize within myself, especially as a parent, it is so imperative that I teach my daughter to be accepting of the LGBTQ community, because for one reason and one reason only, I just want them to feel comfortable to go to my daughter and be friends with her. I want her to be able to be that friend that helps them through life. I
Sorry,
see you
chainsaw. Yeah, did you hear that? What was he doing? He like made something fall. I don't know what he was doing.
I mean, I'm glad he's doing it. I'm just
Yeah, no, it's like one of the first times the kitchen is making noises and he's actually over there and not next to me on the couch.
Yeah, because I was about to say we're gonna end this right now. Bye. I don't want to see nothing on the screen.
You're terrible. Like as you're hitting end, you just hear screaming and you're like, that's not my problem.
I'll call 911 for you. There was this coworker, she was a shelver, who one day a customer came in full camo wear, and the person had this backpack that looked like it was shaped like a rifle as far as the outline of it. And the customer went upstairs and she was coming down from Children's and she saw him going up, and she goes to me and she goes, so my shift isn't over until 1, but I'm going to go ahead and leave. And if I need to call 911, I'll call it for y'all, but I'm not sacrificing myself.
Oh, damn.
And I tell you guys all the time, I almost peed my pants. It was so funny because I just didn't expect it out of her.
Damn.
And anytime the fire alarm went off, she's like, I'll see y'all later. I'll call 911 if I see smoke coming out the building.
Damn. Okay, so that actually goes in line really well with the societal fears and the reflection of like social trauma that we're talking about. So at my last library, the month before I left, there had been a buildup of a lot of violent attacks at the libraries around us. A nurse was stabbed to death. There was a shooting. There was just a lot of really bad things. Up in New England, everything is so closely together that I say it's another library in another town, but it's basically just another brand. Like that's how close it is. I was there for this training, and the training was how to survive an active shooter. Yeah, and what you should do. They spoke to the children's librarians differently than they did the adult reference librarians. And, we had multiple floors, and what's the height that you can jump out a window and survive. Don't try to hide. You have to run and get out of the building. It was so traumatic to go through this training, especially as a children's librarian, because our storytime room was in a different part. You had to go through a locked door and then down a hall into this sub basement. And then the sub basement had a fire escape out into the park area behind the library. And they talked about how to escape during a live shooter during story time. Don't save the kids, just run and save yourself. And I was like, all of it was so traumatic and so terrible. And I hated all of it. And I understand why the training was the way it was, to get the highest number of survivors out of it. But I'm saying all of that to say, I get where that lady was coming from. That's it's very funny to think about someone's reaction to that, because I think that in Boston, if somebody had come in with a gun, it would have been more likely to be an active shooter than here in Houston, where it's just some crackpot who wants to carry it with them because they need a security blanket. I don't know. Yeah. I don't understand open carry.
I mean, same. We also took that active shooter training, and that was by far the most scarring until my daughter started daycare, and she told me one day that they had to hide under the tables from the monster, and I was like, what? And when I contacted the daycare, they said they have to start practicing active shooter drills with the kids, and I was floored. And my sister, who is a librarian, but she was previously a teacher, and she told me that they have to practice it too, and I could tear up just thinking about those little babies. That's one of my biggest fears. I mean, I can't even discuss it without just thinking the worst things are going on in my head right now. And so I can imagine how scarred you were, because I was equally as scarred.
Going through that training and imagining hearing the commotion and then making that split decision of not checking for your coworkers, the people you'll see more than your family if you're all full time, not going back for your wallet or your phone or whatever, and like just jumping out of a window from a second story with the hopes that you land just right, that you don't break too many bones.
Yeah.
I hate this.
Yeah, it's really scary. And it brings me to, we're so far from horror at this point, but I have to bring it up.
No, but we're not though.
So a real life horror for me is the whole aftermath of 9/11. So for the normal American, it's there were terrorists and we need to get rid of the terrorists. But for me, I looked like the terrorist. So for years, when I worked at the library, up when it was maybe within a week of 9/11, close to the anniversary date, I could sit at that desk. So I used to work in circulation in the customer service area. So when I would sit at the desk, I kid you not, 10 times out of 10, customers who believed in that stereotype of all brown people are terrorists would not want me to help them. And they would go to the next person. And so I'd just be sitting there just like, I can help the next person. They are like, I'm fine. I'm going to wait right here. It was just so disgusting. Or they would tell me like, I love America. And you know, that kind of nonsense, you know, like as if I haven't lived here my whole damn life.
Right. As if you don't. Okay, anyway.
So it's really bothersome. And then there's a mutual coworker of ours that I didn't know that she's still experiencing that. Because at least for me, I was there for so long at that specific branch that customers got to know me and they realized like, hey, she's actually a good person. But a coworker of ours, I didn't know that she was still experiencing those judgments and stereotypes. And I felt so bad when I heard it because she's the sweetest woman you'll ever meet. And so to hear that people, oh man, when I heard that, I was so glad I wasn't working there because I was already in daughter mode and needing to protect this mom of mine. You know what I mean? I felt so bad. I guess that type of horror, like the real life horror, really gets to me. And I wish that there were more horror movies that kind of dispel those myths because it's wrong. Sorry, it's wrong.
Yeah. So again, my friend Oz, he talks about how he doesn't like to watch certain movies like Antebellum, things like that, that are struggle porn for Black people. One of my biggest pet peeves is that all of the Jewish fiction that wins awards is about the Holocaust or surviving the Holocaust or dying in the Holocaust. And I'm like, yeah, that's really important stuff, but also we still do other things with our lives. And it'd be great if you guys would write about something else. Not that I don't believe those books shouldn't be written or the story shouldn't be told, because absolutely, because people are fucking stupid when they say, don't even get me started on deniers. But I myself don't want to partake of those stories because I don't need to watch struggle porn, just like Oz doesn't want to watch every 12 Years a Slave. So, but those things need to be out there for other people.
Yeah, because it's essential. I'm sorry. And I know I have a lot of friends that they probably don't think that kind of stuff happens to me of all people, but it does. We're in 2021 and people still in my neighborhood think I am my daughter's nanny just because she is lighter skinned than me. It is what it is. We have moved on. There's some, oh, I hear chainsaw.
Yeah, I think he thinks it's probably time for dinner.
Yeah.
But
Hi, chainsaw. Hi. He's like, okay.
He's like, Mom, let me go.
But yeah, we need to dispel those fears.
We do. So this is going to be kind of a weird story because it's the opposite of what happens to you with your daughter. But when I was in Boston, I babysat for some of the kids from my story times and stuff like that. Cause like I was there long enough, I got to know the parents and the families, and some of them entrusted me with their children on my days off and stuff like that. And so I was babysitting one of my little kiddos, and she was half white and half Korean. She definitely looked mixed of something. And the first day we were out together, she was in her cute little bundled up thing and I was in my little coat and she was in her stroller, and we went to this little French bakery to get her a croissant, and everybody there cooed over her because she is the cutest, most adorable little girl. And they were like, she looks just like you. And I was like, that's strange because she's not mine. I'm babysitting. And they're like, what? I think it's because it's the opposite. The white quote unquote mom or caregiver with a small child, they just assume, but for you, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah. No way could I have this gorgeous little girl as my own.
Isn't that the epitome of white privilege too?
Yeah.
For people just to assume that that's my child.
I
mean, I would adore for her to be my child. She's just perfect, but she's not.
It's insane. And so relatively new, I feel societal fear in horror needs to be more of a discussion and more at the forefront of horror, at least for right now. We need it. We really need it right now.
I feel like we need a refresh from the last couple of years, and people need a freaking reality check. Do you ever feel like you're in the Matrix sometime, or that you're outside of the Matrix and everybody else is existing somehow in it because of the ways that they buy into stuff? And you're like, bro, wake up. What do I need to do to wake you up in a unplug you.
When I saw that Karen Victoria's Secret video, I watched it and I was like, am I really seeing this? Is this the reality right now?
That would upset me too.
I really thought this is fake. This has to be fake because like there's no way that this happened in real life.
Oh no, I knew that was 1,000% real.
Because I really felt this was Holo's simulation, because the fact that the police wouldn't help her even though she had video evidence, and the lady admitted in the police report that she didn't want to be videotaped because she wanted to lose her job because she realized she was in the wrong. All the things that are in this woman's favor, but because she's Black, nothing happened. Whereas in the video, she's telling you, if I did this, y'all would already have put me out. I would already have been arrested. All this stuff is happening. And it's like, yes, that's really what would be happening. But why is it not happening? Why is it not happening? Why are we watching this horror play out? So it is really weird.
Yeah. No, I knew that was real right off the bat. You see the recording start as soon as she was reaching in to hit her, and then that white woman realized she was being recorded, and she immediately is, I'm going to lose my job and I'll never be able to get back where I am. And so she pulled the white tears act, and I was just like, you make me sick. I hope your ass gets fired. I hope not only do you get fired, but you'll never be able to find a job ever again. You don't deserve to be out there mingling with the public.
No. Well, and she was a teacher at that. Are you kidding me? You're molding young brains? No, thank you. You need to lose your job. You need to go do something. I don't know. You just don't deserve to work with kids.
Yeah.
Definitely appreciate Societal Fear Horror. That's definitely, like you said, is one of our favorites, just for the fact that it educates as well as entertains.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say entertain because, man, Lovecraft was really hard to watch. I don't want to say I was entertained.
It's upsetting, but it's still good entertainment.
Yeah, and we need it.
Yes. Whew, y'all. Okay, first off, I just want to say, please don't use any of my public social media accounts to call me out for being crazy about some of the stuff I was talking about with disposal and alignment theory. Y'all, I'm working on being a better person, so just keep that in mind.
And also, listen, we're cool. We're chill. Like, we've got good lives. We're not that weird. I mean, we are, but we're not that weird.
I mean, I'm not going to sell any of those lies, but I will say that I am trying really hard to be a better person.
Just enjoy a good horror. It doesn't mean anything.
The Sedina of 20 years ago was probably someone you should have feared, but the Sedina now is working really hard to leave that Sedina behind. So please, just remember, I got people that need me.
Yeah. Listen, I play Pokemon Go when I'm not doing anything, so you have nothing to worry about for me, okay? I'm pretty chill. My daughter needs me, so I gotta be straight with her.
I'm gonna be arrested, or tapped or something.
I'm probably already am, so why not you two?
Yeah, my phone gives me advertisements for Sailor Moon and Death Halloween decor, but like nothing in between. That's it. That's me. I'm Sailor Moon or the decrepit witch's hand bolted to the wall as like a key holder.
With that, we'll end this episode. I think I might put up a poll of the 8 theories so y'all can join us, so look out for that.
Thank you guys for joining us in this particular episode, and please keep listening to us.
Yes, please. We love you.
we're really good people. Jennifer's really good people.
Sedina is too. Don't let her fool you.
Bye.
Bye.
If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryontheleft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryontheleft.com.